So, if you ask me what it is to live well, to be true to yourself, to live for an ideal, there's so many stories about if you have a very, very, very high ideal, impossible to reach, that's the best. It's like the horizon, it will keep you alive.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Reflections on Living Well podcast, where we explore perspectives on the good life in the 21st century. I am your host, Broderick. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reflections on Living Well podcast. Today, our guest is Laura Uplinger. Laura is a student and educator in the field of conscious conception, pregnancy, labor, and breastfeeding. Since the late 1970s, she has been a proponent of the powerful influence a mother's inner life has on the formation of her baby during pregnancy and the breastfeeding months. From 1988 to 1999, she served on the Association for Prenatal and Perinatal Psychology and Health's Board of Directors, and is currently the Vice President of the Brazilian Association for Prenatal Education, with whom she coordinates seminars and an 18-month training program in which the spiritual dimensions of pregnancy, as well as psychological and physiological ones, are addressed. Hi, Laura. How are you?
Hello, Broderick. I am fine, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to talk with you today and hear your thoughts on living well and the good life. I love your background in your interest in mothers and their birthing process and encouraging favorable conditions for
Hmm.
the child to be born
Yeah,
and into a beautiful world.
it's an honor for me to be here with you, to be able to spend this time speaking about what really matters. How can we
Hmm.
have a life that is worth living, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited. Well, I know I just read that bio, but I also like guests to introduce themselves in however way you like. Um,
Well, um, I'm a daughter of diplomats. So when my father started his career, he went first to Montreal, Canada, as a Brazilian diplomat, and then he called my mother so that she could. They were dating for some 5 years almost. So she went to Montreal. They got married, and I was conceived. So the beginning of my life on Earth was in Montreal, but shortly afterwards, he was, I don't know, he got a position at the Brazilian embassy at the United Nations in New York. That's how at least half of my time in the womb was spent in New York, the gorgeous New York in the 50s. And my mother was so happy to have married the man she loved and also to be in New York and to be pregnant. So somehow she gifted me with this gift of enthusiasm because that's my default. When nothing is happening, I'm enthusiastic for something.
mm,
So what a gift! What a gift to give a child, yes. And then life started. I mean, they went to Bolivia. There I was with them. I learned how to speak in Bolivia, and then Brazil when I was 4. When I was finally 7 years old, they went to France, to Paris, and French became my language to go to school
mm,
from primary grades to the end of the high school and then also university. So somehow I combined this French um, learning with the Brazilian mind of my parents. But then I had a 25-year marriage with a gorgeous American man. He was
mm,
a TV producer. He produced Live Aid, the American part, and distributed it. His name was Hal Uplinger. And so he gifted me with his nation. And then finally, I could be American. I could taste daily life in California, which I adored. Our daughter was born in Washington, D.C. But when I was 22, my parents were in Algiers. I was living in Paris as a student of psychology. And I would spend all my vacations because didn't have any money. So what you do on vacation, you go to visit your parents. At that time, my parents were already living in an embassy. I mean, this was very different from the life I had had as a child with them. He was
Mm.
an ambassador, finally. And there was one big party. No, no, I shouldn't say big. It was an important day. The National Day of Brazil is September 7th. And there I was 3 days before going back to university in Paris. And it was an afternoon reception just for the diplomatic corps. And I meet a shaman. He was a Peruvian diplomat, yes, but he was clairvoyant and he could
Mm.
see auras. He could see plenty of stuff. I didn't even know I had a soul. I believed in the brotherhood of man, yes,
Mhm.
but I did not know who would be the father or the mother. I had no idea of a divine father and a divine mother. And that Peruvian diplomat looked at me and immediately realized that I was starving without even knowing that there was a kind of thirst in me. And he kind of provoked me into thinking a little bit more about the meaning of life, gave me
Mm.
some brochures and a book. And one of them was about, I don't know, sacrifice and the powers of the rays at sunrise. And this is how my spiritual path started because it was a spiritual master from Bulgaria who used to teach in France. He had been born in 1900. So I go back to Paris, read the books, and at Christmas, there I meet this Omram. And since then, my life has been kind of an interplay between my thirst for learning, my simple ignorance, my joy of understanding that there is a meaning to life, and all my struggles to understand that meaning.
Mm. Wow, thank you for sharing all of that, offering up that context and of your journey to realizing this thirst for spiritual understanding, a deeper, richer understanding of yourself and your place in the world. And I love it. And I love how it brought you to doing this work with nurturing and supporting mothers and
Yeah.
bringing life into the world.
It's funny, that was one of the main things he would say, that women are so powerful during pregnancy and they don't know about it. And they just live
Mm.
a normal life and unfortunately contribute to bring on more and more of a mediocre human civilization instead
Mm.
of being at her best. A pregnant woman is forced to do so many other things that have nothing to do with pregnancy. But this is the moment to bring on earth people who won't pollute, who won't say yes to corruption, people who will spouse life, who will be eager to contribute in a meaningful
Mm.
way to being a human being and all of mankind, as they say. So I consider myself very lucky to have had some spiritual meaning at the start of my adult life.
Mm.
Um, I don't know how people do it without that. But then it brought me not only a profession, and I even met my husband there in these spiritual gatherings, gave me a daughter, because this conscious conception, I had been working on some 15 years on all these extraordinary missions every woman has when she is pregnant. And
Mm.
so then when it was my turn, I was so happy to have a companion who could think that way. And then heaven, of course, sent us a very, very nice kid. Because I don't
Mm.
know if I would have been really fit to be a great mother to a difficult child. She
Mm.
was strong being, but I could understand her and she could understand me. Astrologically, our charts really match. Now she's in her mid 30s and she lives in Los Angeles. I live here in Brazil. The master, Omram, he passed onto the other level in 86.
Mm.
I had just married 1 year before. this other disciple of his, and our life was fabulous. Every time there was a project somewhere, as a broadcaster, a senior broadcaster, he would just go. So we went to Washington, D.C., we went to Marin County, but we lived most of our life together in Los Angeles. And every place you go, there you bring all the selves you are, and each of them needs an education somehow. And that fascinates me, how to
Mhm.
better communicate with life and with humans and animals and trees and all the kingdoms.
Mhm.
So reading is one of my passions. I think when I was 8, 9 years old when I started reading regularly as a way of having companionship with life, with people who were long dead, or friends like right now are writing books that I'm reading even before they're published. So reading has been for me, I don't know for you, Broderick, but reading has been like an anchor, an
Mhm.
anchoring, my way of finding intelligent minds even before the day starts, when it between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. before the day starts, to just go deep into the mind of another person who is so
Mhm.
bright and so beautiful. So I have great companionship with books.
Oh, I love it. Me too. Me too. I love it. And for those reasons, building that connection with another being through conversation with them, be through their literature, exploring their mind, taking their perspective. I think that's a theme there in your introduction here is that you've had such a broad experience. You have a broad perspective. You spent time in different places. You've been able to see the world through different lenses. Man, I think that's just fascinating. That's a part of this podcast and reflecting on living well is thinking of looking at different perspectives, looking at different worldviews and seeing how they see what living well means to them and exploring those worldviews and listening to different perspectives and see how I can, how we all who are participating in this dance and on this podcast, how we all can expand our awareness and our perspective
Yeah.
on living well. So speaking of that, what does living well mean to you? What is a life well lived?
Well, um, all this traveling gave me at a very young age the a possibility of speaking several languages. Always spoke 4 languages, and that multiplies the friendships and all that. But each language has a different grammar, as you were saying. What is absolutely forbidden in English is mandatory in French. You'll write a plural, the white cars in French has to be the white cars. You cannot not make it together. And and when I discovered that when you write in English, you say I want, the I is a capital I. It's fantastic. In French, you make yourself small. In English, you make yourself great, big. But I'm the same 12-year-old writing a dictation, taking a dictation in from the English teacher. For me, live well has to do with certainly with friendship, kinship with life, and I was not brought up for that. This came within me, and I went further, but on my own. I rode horses, plenty of horses between the age of 13 and 16. That gave me such a joy. There was a club. You didn't need to pay much for some riding lessons. There was a teacher who had a horse for me to ride. And those were 3 years in every vacations. There I was on horseback in the afternoon when nobody goes horseback riding in the afternoon. They are at the beach. I would go to the beach in the morning. But that solitary, um, the conquering of a skill that had nothing to do with my parents or my culture. I was going to ride horses, perhaps remembering past lives. Who knows? Um, that gave me this communion with nature. The morning at the beach was there was nobody. I would leave the beach at noon to have a shower and lunch when everybody was arriving. But I knew the gorgeous warmth of that sand, that light, and swim far away into the ocean, then coming back. I would do that almost every day, but on my own. So, great part of my adoring to be alive has to do with all the times I spent alone. And I somehow thank the heavens that there wasn't any social media at the time, because I would have been totally on it. Because I had friends in several continents, so I would not
Mhm.
have lost touch with them as I did. But on the other
Mhm.
hand, all that solid and fertile time on my own thinking and reading at the beach at 10 a.m. in the morning in Rio when I was a teenager. At the age of 16, I went to live in France, also alone in Paris. Wow. I think the walking through streets and through forests and gorgeous places, thanks to my parents, I discovered South Africa, Algiers. I went to the desert, the Sahara Desert, oases, the taste of those, the dates, um, so delicious fruits and jasmine smells. I love the senses, and I've been to places in many corners of the earth, and they have nurtured me. The people say that sometimes that I'm a nurturing person. I essentially feel that I was nurtured by life. And
Mhm.
then I was able to work, and as luck would have it, by chance, I would have an interview and was accepted at UNESCO in the Office of Public Information. I was just out of school, but they accepted me, and I trained with a Uruguayan older man who had been one to write the chart of the human rights of the UN, of the United Nations in New York, then went to work at UNESCO in Paris. So I met remarkable people. I understood that some people on earth are able to live their philosophy in an altruistic way or intelligent way or bright way. And I was very happy for that. Meeting Omram was extraordinary because it put an order, a beauty, and an elevation to my daily life, but it gave meaning to everything I had. So, if you ask me what it is to live well, to be true to yourself, to live for an ideal, there's so many stories about if you have a very, very, very high ideal, impossible to reach, that's the best. It's like the
Mhm.
horizon. It will keep you alive. When you give yoga classes, people don't want to be a yoga teacher. They want to be there in the moment.
Mhm.
So the arts, beauty, oh, that has an immense impact on me. But the beauty of an idea, it can be from Plato or from a friend next door, when it's really a shining idea and it brings you light, I can savor. So I think it's our duty not only to be happy, but to feel well, to live well. It's what is asked from us. But I say that, and I had all the meanings to do so. I could be a daughter, and then I was a wife, so I never needed to exchange money for my services. Okay, when I was at UNESCO for a year and a half, I did earn some very nice money. It was just a beginning, but for me it was so wonderful. But then three of my direct um, bosses, they gave up UNESCO because of corruption at the top. So I decided to go to South America to come to South America. It was Venezuela at the time my parents were there, and I lived with them over a year. So you see, I went to many places, got nurtured by many fruits, many skies, many friends. And then finally I came to Brazil for 5 years and I worked on psychosomatic medicine. Even finding a job with psychosomatic medicine, it came totally on a tray.
Mhm.
So the minimum I can do is to say thank you for life. Thank you. Even when I make my bed in the morning, I can thank the cotton of the sheets and the down and the beauty of the place. I live here in a retreat center, a fraternal center. and everything is geared towards spirituality, so it becomes very solemn, and that gives me great joy.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I that's so. You said a lot there. A lot of pieces to the puzzle that I think is that I resonate with, and I think it's important. I mean, you began by saying friendships are is an important piece of the puzzle, connecting with others, and also having a deep relationship with yourself, having the taking the time and space to listen. No, those are my words here. To yourself, to contemplate life, to reflect on life, to connect with the surrounding environment that you find yourself in, the various environments that you found yourself and being in a situation where you can allow yourself to be still, to be observant, mm, to be aware and sensitive to your inner world, the inner life, and then also have a sensitivity to your external experience. I am like that a lot. I like my time alone for those reasons that you just mentioned, for contemplation, for reflection, for the exploration of ideas through literature, or the exploration of nature, just sitting out and being reflective, um, on nature. Yes, be still and silent, and also uh, reflective,
Yeah,
allowing the mind to explore ideas and see what insights are garnered when I am in an environment. How does that how do the birds inspire my thought, that my reflections on life and meaning and significance? That
yeah.
piece is so important.
It is one of the things that perhaps you already are aware of, but you know the quantity of prana at sunrise.
Mm-hmm.
Omram was very keen on telling people, at least in summer and springtime and summer, go and watch the sunrise. There is electric magnetic fields. There are physical and spiritual realities. And for those who study the Kabbalah, to have our look towards the sun, that light. Then in esotericism, the sun sent us rays as a way of showing love. And
Mm-hmm.
then in the afternoon, those rays go back. They go first to another planet to get purified because they're not so pure when they go back. We know if you go to the ocean, to the beach in the afternoon, it's not the same kind of feeling than if you go in the morning. So Omram also gave me that gift through every sunrise and also through every food we eat. Those are moments of higher communion with the four elements, but also each of the four elements has an angel, an extraordinary entity way above, of an extraordinary dimension, and they are the creators with the heavens of this world here. So every time we're in contact with a fruit, with a vegetable, I don't know, eggs, cheese, we are in contact with the work of four elements. And then, of course, there's shower and there's the wind. And so, for me, to multiply every possible moment of communion with life is part of our path of consciousness. Be
Mm-hmm.
aware that you're breathing, what you do in yoga. Be aware that you're standing, that there's a whole intricate connection between trillions of cells in your body with metabolic functions per second over a million, and everything is alive.
Mm-hmm.
So this has to be impressive. It's like listening to a symphony of Beethoven. I don't know. For me, this is bliss, and gives me an idea, a vortex of possibilities, of imagination, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still communion. with life. What this man, I say Beethoven because he's one of my favorites, but every great musician, the communion they reached with life. What an example. I love it. I love it that we have examples. Omram was, as far as I'm concerned, an extraordinary ambassador of life.
Mhm.
And he deciphers in a very simple way. His teachings were only spoken, they were not written. So now the
Mhm.
books are his conferences that were printed. And it's so simple, this oral language, which it allowed me to read many more complicated books later, gave me a solid basis to read, I don't know, Swedenborg or Kierkegaard, or people that I would not have known how to interpret otherwise, not
Mhm.
having known Omram. I met him in 76 and he died in 86. So those were 10 years knowing that he was around in every vacation, school vacations. I could go and see him. And I was able to travel to the south of France or to Paris. What a joy. I feel really privileged. In spite of all my inadequacies, when I think about life, there's something in me that smiles, but completely.
Mhm. Oh man, I love it. This is I'm enjoying this already. um, I love that communion with life, connection with life, love of life. That's the way I like to use that term, love. When we allow ourselves to, yeah, commune deeply with life. Again, allowing those senses to be engaged,
Yes.
allowing those elements to touch the senses and be sensitive to those, to be sensitive to the presence of life itself and our dance with it. I think is so beautiful and eloquent the way that you just spoke of it. I know we're using terms and words here, but words are helpful in pointing us in a direction of possibilities of living, and gives us the opportunity to play with life in a way that how we can apply our agency, our will,
Yeah.
through language to give us not to give us direction, but to navigate, yeah, to navigate the spaces in which we find ourselves in. And again, I think it's such an important lesson of your life, all of your experiences and the multiplicity of your experiences, has given you the opportunity to see. When I say see, not just visual, to see, to taste, to smell, to touch, to feel, the sense in various ways, life in its multiplicity.
Yeah, but you
Um,
said something important, this agency. I think we
mhm,
should sponsor more agency in young ones. Let them
mhm,
do it. Go ahead, go on your
mhm.
own. Find who you are, what you want at your level. It will never finish that kind of work. But go and
Mhm.
study life.
Yes.
And people are always wanting to rest. I would not advise anybody to rest and relax with a beer. No, just forget about it. You have the night to sleep, and the rest of the time, be there, be present. There's so
Yes.
much to discover.
I love that. Oh, you brought up something. I love that. That that's a subtle distinction, audience, about resting. And how I interpret what you're saying is there's something peaceful, relaxing when you're communing with life,
Yeah.
when you're really present with life, when you're really tuned and locked in
Mhm.
with your experience, when you're really present. That's relaxing in and of itself.
Yeah.
But what we typically refer to as relaxing, I think we're kind of checking out from life. We're kind of like, I'm
Yes.
relaxing. And I'm,
There's,
no, we're disconnecting
yes. You
versus
know,
just being with it.
yeah, I must have exaggerated in other lifetimes because I remember as a child, very young, I was 5, understanding that drinking would never be for me. I could see the adults always having their gin tonics and having lunch around 3 p.m. and they couldn't walk normally. And said, no, I don't want that for me. Imagine there is a fire next door. I won't be able to run into that house to save a dog. I remember thinking that.
Mm.
And like, So I was free from, because of course I saw things that I would have never liked to have seen. Life was not easy in itself during my childhood, but I had so many points, as you say, of having my own way of seeing things that didn't correspond to how my family would see things, but at least they would let me free. And I was able to develop the things I liked. And I think books, since the age of 8, were a very great guide. I loved Jules Verne, From the Earth to the Moon, and Children of Captain Grant, and Around the World in 80 Days, all these books and many others, because when you're French, you read Les Miserables, you read Victor Hugo, you read great books and novels. I loved it. Then Balzac, Zola, when I was older, the stuff of life told by intelligent minds in a novel
Hmm.
really found in me some things to respond. Somehow my previous lifetimes had primed me to embrace life at a different level than most of my friends. But I had great friends, but we were not alike.
Hmm. Yeah, you keep coming back to literature and stuff. You know, in my experience, so I grew up in a very small rural town, and education wasn't stressed for various reasons, and I didn't read much at all until I got to college, really.
Okay.
And I fell in love with it in the summer between undergraduate and graduate school. Now I would read my science textbooks. I have a science background. I love
Okay.
math at the time, and I don't know, it's something about there was the seed of thinking abstractly and puzzles was there through my engineering, scientific interests, and particularly mathematics, which I really loved. But then I found literature. I
Oh,
found it opened me up to, and it was most of it was nonfiction and historical and biographies and autobiographies, stories. And but it opened me up to the broad expansiveness of the world, of reality. Like, oh, I can see things differently. Again, being able to see the world through the lens of someone else, and how important that was for me. I know that contrast because I spent a large part of my, I guess I'm older now, not quite the first half, but that large part of the first part of my life, I didn't really, I had a very narrow and limited way of looking at the world. But when I exposed myself through literature, it expanded the possibilities of of how I can see the world. I think it also nurtured my agency. You know,
mm,
it didn't make me do anything, but it piqued my interest. I
yeah,
became much more interested in things. And I'm like, oh, and especially when you read biographies, autobiographies, you really get to see how a person chose to do certain things, the reasons behind it, what sparked that interest. It's motivating, it's inspiring, and it helped me want to go and explore more.
yeah.
And
Your
since
sense
then,
of self, your sense of
yeah,
self was being built, and
exactly.
yeah, the state of California asked Isabel Allende, this author from Chile, but she's lives in Marin County, to write the story, a novel about the story of California, kind of a history book, but through the eyes of a woman writer. And she researched for almost 20 years. And then she came up with the book Zorro, Empieza la leyenda, Zorro, the legend begins. And the book starts in 1789, French Revolution. California is still part of Mexico. And the parents of Zorro are meeting. So Zorro is a fictional uh, hero, but we all love Zorro. I mean, who was a child loving his way of bringing justice for those who were being so mistreated? And then Napoleon invades Spain, and he's 20 years old, and he goes to Spain, and he finds gypsies, and he goes back then to California. It's an extraordinary lesson in history through the eyes of this novelist, a writer
Mm-hmm.
who can make your heart, wow, this is so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
when you read, I mean, I really recommended this book by Isabel Allende on Zorro.
Mm-hmm.
Just an idea, and it is almost as if you were with her,
Mm-hmm.
um, with her brilliant mind, um, bringing to the conversation at lunchtime
Mm-hmm.
fabulous moments of our Western world history.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that. I'm definitely have to pick that up. And and later, I found fiction, and then I'm really enjoying that based on for the reason you just mentioned. Through storytelling, through fictional storytelling, there's so many profound lessons that one can gain from life about life. A good storyteller is telling us about history in a way that's hidden within the characters and their experiences, and yeah, it's just beautiful and what it does for you. And again, as I began this as an adult, and I know the difference. I see the contrast and how it literally blew my mind out. It's just and it continues to do so. I just love it, and I think it has helped me have a better sense of the world reality, and it has given me more possibilities for exploring reality.
Yeah,
And you said something earlier that I concur with, I agree with, when you said that it is our responsibility to live well. In order for us to live well, I think it's important. Well, this is one perspective, one take on it. You know, I think it's important to expand our awareness of the potentials that we have within ourselves.
yeah,
And when we do that, we maximize our capacity to live a good life, to live well, because we see more. There are more things available to us in our awareness, and we have more choices. And from those choices, we're more likely to connect with those things within ourselves that we were not aware of before. And it connects with the things you mentioned earlier, the stillness, the silence, the deep listening, communing with life, doing all of that and expanding the potential, your linguistic potential for what I think this is what we're doing for naming the world, by telling our story moment to moment through language. When we sit still, we take in, and then we play with language to navigate through
yeah,
space time in a way that enhances our capacity to live well, to live a good life. And I don't think we know what that's I don't know what that's going to look like exactly tomorrow. I can envision, I can dream, but I don't know. And I'm excited for what's possible
yeah.
because I keep opening myself up to all of these possibilities, and I gain another insight, and I move in that direction based on that little insight. But it
Yes,
requires deep
what
listening.
you're saying
Yeah.
is bringing to my mind the body mind reality. You
Hmm.
mean my body is my best instrument, is my perfect instrument to be here on earth.
Yeah.
I remember Omram saying, you have trillions of cells. Okay. But suppose you have to clean a little bedroom. You have to vacuum, to dust, to make the beds, to do things in that room. And it will take you some 40, 45 minutes. As you're working, your cells are watching you. The very intensity of each gesture, or softness of each gesture, what you're thinking inside, and if you're cleaning in a revolted way or enjoying it, everything they're taking notes. Once you stop that cleaning, they start treating each other, your own cells, the way you treated the objects. So
Mm-hmm.
first we have to speak about cell consciousness, which is so important in the sacred teachings. And of course, I am into this universe of prenatal psychology. We start with one cell. that already at the very start knows that one day it will be a baby being born and breathing. How can we be born prepared to breathe when we have never been in touch with air? See how magical the whole thing is. We've all done it, but
Mm-hmm.
boy, oh boy. So to be aware that our body is with us, we have a body. As Teilhard de Chardin used to say, we're not here having spiritual experiences. We're spiritual beings having an earthly experience, and everything counts. So a life lived with that sense that you're searching for, like some meaning, some happiness inside, and respect, of course, and joy and gratefulness, is
Mm-hmm.
a life that will take into consideration the importance and the beauty of every human body.
Mm-hmm.
Cellular level and soul level are so
Mm-hmm.
connected.
Yeah, I love it. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And there's a big lesson in that too. All these trillions of cells in our skin and our within our body, these trillions of cells are cooperating with each other. They're interacting with each other to give us to facilitate this experience that we're having. And again, speaking to, I'm going to use your language here. I'm just playing here. We're just playing here, and each cell are communing with each other. And when they're communing with each other, there you have a healthy body. When the cells are listening to each other, when they've found their purpose through differentiation, from a stem cell,
Yeah,
and they found their purpose through differentiation,
yeah. And the
and they just,
intelligence of cells. I remember in
yeah.
his book, The Tao of Physics, Friedrich Capra says, do you want to know the size of an atom of an orange? You take that orange, you grow it to the size of planet Earth. Its atom will be the size of a cherry. You want to know the size of the nucleus of that cherry, that atom, then you have to blow the cherry to the size of Mont Saint Michel, an island of the coast of France, which is a beautiful medieval island with dedicated to Saint Michael Archangel. And then its nucleus will be the size of a little grain of sand. Whoa. So there is an immensity of empty space within the infinitely small. So whew, that gives you I said, wow, what is that? Like a vertigo. Who are we?
Yeah.
We're connecting heaven and earth, yes, thanks to our body and our mind, body
Mm-hmm.
mind. But then we have angelic hierarchies, and then we have atoms, and the amount of memory that a cell can have is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And science is just beginning to unravel the importance of epigenetics, like we're not victims of our genetics, like we're not victims of our astrological uh, patterns, the way we were born and how the stars were there for us. So, a lot to study. I think that reassures me in life, Broderick,
Mm-hmm.
that no matter where I am, there will be lots to study.
Yeah. I love it. Yes, exactly. I think that's a part of the good life for me, living well. Whatever that looks like on, tangibly, I think we can talk about signposts and stuff like that. But I think, that there's a lot to discover. There's a lot to be gain awareness of. And through that awareness, again, we can increase the capacity to live well. And it requires that I think some of what you just said too requires a certain level of humility. It requires humility to say that I don't know, to say that there's more to discover. And you said something about science is just figuring certain things out. I think a lot of us in the scientific community are dogmatic, fundamentalistic, and lack that humility. But when you have humility and an openness for discovery, there's so much about this universe that we just don't know. You can't take a 250,000-year-old brain and say that you know all these things about the world. We only know certain patterns. We only know how to describe certain patterns in a particular way. That doesn't mean that we know the world. We just have a
Mhm.
good map of
Mhm.
how we are experiencing the world in this possibility of the universe and or this possibility of reality. That's just one possibility out of an infinite number of
This
possibilities.
is
And to
great.
suggest that we know only with a 250,000-year-old brain is insanity. And in the way that we are thinking about things is just lacks humility, and that humility and openness that you're speaking of that invokes this. I guess it evokes this sense of awe and wonder about the universe, about
I
reality
see.
itself.
I see the picture behind your left shoulder.
Yeah.
There's a man there. Tell us about him.
Oh no, this is she's a musician. She's
It's a she. It's a she. Okay, from here it's
yeah.
more of a man because she has no big hair. So
Yeah.
tell. It's
it,
important. That picture is so alive behind you.
oh I know, she's beautiful. Her name is Sona Jobarta. She's a kora player, and she plays the kora, and she's a beautiful musician from the Gambia, and yeah, she's just my one of my favorite musicians in the
Wow,
world. She's just, and it's it's yeah. I would just say that her music is amazing to me. Yeah,
it's
I know a lot of
pure.
people ask me, "Who is this person behind?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's the only poster I have in my house of a person," and
Wow.
it's her because of her music. It's just so. I'm glad that and I'm happy to share the world with
Yeah.
about her because her music is great, and she's doing great stuff there and building a school and sending around music. But yeah, she's a great person. I think I don't know her personally like that, but I love her music anyway. But yeah, I like the free flowing nature of this conversation. I didn't know it would go down this path, and I think I like when I like exploring these kind of abstract ideas, and I don't know what I'm saying. I'm trying to figuring it out as I go, and I'm like trying to put the pieces together. So, audience, this is so. I want to make sure I explain why this because I think this is why conversations are important. It's not
Yes.
about trying to sound smart. I'm just interested in these things. It's not about having it all figured out. I'm saying stuff and I'm like trying to figure out to put the pieces together and I won't fully grasp it until later on, but that's the important part about having conversations. This type of conversation because we're having a conversation I think because both of us are really deeply interested in spiritual practice. We're interested in the cosmic significance of our life. And we're yogis, and when you're engaged in that, we're just having this fun flowing conversation. It's exploratory. And that's what I'm trying to encourage with these by hosting these conversations is as an audience tune in and listen. Hopefully you're doing the same thing. I hope hopefully you're exploring and I'm hoping that you go out and have a conversation exploring and I don't let it be messy. That's life. Just
Let it be
figuring it out.
messy. I love it.
Who
Yes.
knows? I don't know everything, man. I don't know. I know I don't know everything because of what a lot of what you just said is having that humility and that openness to this vast universe and realizing that there's so much more to discover, and we limit ourselves um, by our paradigms that we find ourselves in. But if we just keep opening ourselves up to these, I mean, the possibility is infinite.
Yeah.
And if there's an infinite possibility of awareness and knowing, then there's this infinite possibility of beauty and wonder that is amazing. And I think when we commune with life, like you're saying, we can discover some of those things and feel into some of those things that we may not necessarily have a cognitive, linguistic way of confining it or defining it, but we can experience it in a way that you've been suggesting that
Well,
I'm
this
I'm
is
kind of
my
feeding off of what you're saying.
what you're grasping here, what you're what you recorded in your mind It's exactly what I wish for every pregnant woman, to be able
Mm-hmm.
to have that true relationship with life. This is a way for her first to have serenity and to feel joy. But then the state of mind, of heart, is a state that will convey to her bloodstream a biochemistry that will be perfect for the growth of her baby, for the growth and
Mm-hmm.
development, even making some parts better genetically, or making the best of the genetic potential be there in the body. Because not all of us have that in the womb, have had that in the womb of our mom.
Yep.
Sometimes life was too tough, and they spent a pregnancy heavy with anguish, which
Mm-hmm.
is not how, of course you can have moments of anguish, but not by default.
Mm-hmm.
In the making of a human being in the little body, in that formation, um, the day-to-day daily life that is not infused, imbued with beauty, with hope, will not allow for certain circuitries, neurophysiology of the brain to be
Mm-hmm.
correctly uh, put into place. Every cell being born has to go a certain pathway. A little neuron, for instance, has to go up a cortical ladder, and in order to go to the neocortex, for instance, and establish its own web. But if there is too much cortisol, too much sadness or worries, then some of the neurons will just die, but others will establish their network a little bit under, not in the correct place. For later on, you have a person capable of thinking long term, of having altruism or empathy to come easily in their behavior. It will be
Mm-hmm.
more difficult. It's never too late to re educate oneself. We can
Yeah.
throughout life. And you know that with yoga. But why not to give already a great start to our little ones? And it's
Yes.
not what we see around. And then we abandon them in daycare centers. My goodness, how can a society be so blind? The mother who wants to leave the child, okay, but most of them don't want to. They have to. They need to work. And how should we have a civilization based on abandoning a kid several hours a day, every day of the week? It's not okay. We should be more attentive to the real needs of feeling well at the very beginning of life, so we have more opportunities later on to participate in endeavors that will be constructive and not to devise weapons of mass destruction with our intelligence. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to be able to make those weapons. So just not to make them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Right.
choice.
Yeah. I love it. I'm glad you segued into that. I was just going to ask you that to elaborate, and I want you to elaborate even more about how that process that you just mentioned. How does that facilitate the good life, or maximize the good life for all? And you just said a lot about it, but I would love for you to say some more about this. Because you just created a film. Um, was it 2 years ago? A couple
Yes,
years ago that it was put
2 years
out.
ago. But you
And what
know,
is it called? Can you say the name of the film,
yes,
and then also speak to more about how we taking responsibility as adults in nurturing civilization towards the good by taking care of this birthing process in a way that's sane.
well, the title of the documentary, which is now available to all free of charge, there's just a little link, a Vimeo link. It's Pregnancy and Civilization, the Power of Pregnant Women Over Our Future. And we are now the result. You take a history book from high school, you press it, and there's so much blood, so many wars, so you can ask, who were these people making all these decisions? And then you study the life of the heads of state since long ago. Pregnancy marriages were arranged, most of them, pregnancy wasn't an ecstatic moment. It was, I don't know, when there's so much fear with it, fear of dying, of losing the baby. But then there were wet nurses, mandatory. I found out only one king of France breastfed, I mean, his wife breastfed the kids. He loved his wife and wanted, and it was a scandal. Majesty, don't do that. This is for the servants. Let your woman, your wife, have a wet nurse. So, you see, if I am born to a mother and she does not want to breastfeed me, not doesn't want to cuddle me, and she doesn't even sit at the table with my wet nurse, I'm not worthy of her. I'll have to prove her. Then these people will have great education, but then they would be very insecure. They're not backed up by this gorgeous, delicious, and warm love from parents. Love, I mean, touching, holding, and interacting. Well, if a person is very insecure, probably, very probably, that person will be aggressive. In my neighborhood, okay. But if I am a head of state, if I'm a king or a great minister, in spite of all my intelligence and great upbringing, I might feel deep down inside that I am insecure. So I'll be aggressive, I will be assertive, so as to put myself above the others. What a pity. I
Hmm.
wish we can now turn the page and give the best to everybody who's born on earth, including breastfeeding. And it should be possible. We know already scientifically so much, and we could apply what we know.
Hmm. What are some of the things? Thank you for that. I think this is this is post election here in the United States, and the character that prevailed in that election. Um, it makes you want to wonder what was happening there in their birthing process, and their what happened with them in their infancy, and not just that character, but also the character of the nation. Um, what is it about a society that says that yes, this type of vile, I think, abhorrent behavior is acceptable? We want that to represent us. I want my grocery bills are too high, or yeah, things were better back then. I got some checks back then. And or if you're some super rich person in tech, I like certain policies, but the behavior, the moral standards, I don't care nothing about all that. That's not important. And it just makes you wonder about folks in a society that feels that way. What happened? And I think your film, and I think I haven't finished looking at it yet, and I'm going to complete it. But I just the first parts that I have looked at, I'm like, your film is really speaking to this, and I think this is something for us to think about. How do we nurture civilization through how we care for mothers? And how we care for the incoming beings into this world. What conditions are we creating for them? And I think what just happened here, there's a lot to say what happened here, but a big piece of this is we're obviously not taking those things into consideration when you have um, a population that justifies um, moral delinquent behavior, and says that I like it. I really, really like this. This is great. This is what I want to represent me. I think there's a lot there in the shadow of our humanity that we need to deal with. We need to sit
Oh
with.
boy. Oh boy. Yes, we can the worst and we can the best. And
Yeah.
this free will that we carry, that angels don't have, neither animals, here we are in the middle with that famous free will. How will I use my energies every day to partake communion with life, to have this bread of companionship with all? How can I respect life? atomic life at the level of the atoms and soul life.
Mm-hmm.
How can I bring in my life soulful moments? I so admire that you are like almost like a monk. You dedicated so much of your life to a spiritual path, and you became it. And now
Mm-hmm.
you want others to think about all that or what it means. We need people like you are lighthouses on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
They might say, "Oh no, I don't want this life." You're not asking anybody to live any kind of life. You just want them to be true to themselves.
Yes.
And if you know the energy level of our body, energy levels of every chakra, this is big.
Mm-hmm.
Every articulation, every joint is a chakra. We have
Mm-hmm.
many little ones, not just the big ones, the seven ones that are so famous and colorful. But then it takes agency and it takes a correct use of our freedom,
Yep.
which is not easy, not
No.
easy. And we fall from the horse, yeah, and then we go back on.
Yep. Yep.
It's good to be on the same planet as you, my
I
dear
know. I
Broderick.
was just
Thank
thinking
you.
the same thing. I was just thinking the same thing because I think, and I think, thank you for seeing that. I think sometimes I don't, I am a monk in many respects. I have a very monastic thread in me, and there have been parts of me that's kind of resisted it in a way, trying to, do certain things in a way that's contrary to that. And I think just my goal has been trying, I'm just going to use the word love, but I think whatever word one wants to use, but to illuminate love and goodness and beauty in the world. And you're right, this podcast, trying to have these conversations. I'm not trying to tell anybody how to live. I got my ideas now. I have my passions, as you all saw through this conversation. That I say some things and I'm like, I don't even know what the hell I'm talking about right now, but I'm just letting it come out and see what happens. I'm
Yeah,
exploring in the moment. So I don't know everything. I'm telling you right now that I know I don't know everything.
it is
And
great.
so that's not what I'm trying to get at. Now I'm a stubborn yogi. If you know yoga, hardcore, I'm stubborn. Most yogis are very stubborn, and stubborn, it means that you're very disciplined and you want to stay on something. And so I am, and I'm passionate about my perspective, but I'm also open and I'm also aware that I don't know everything. I can't know it all. And I'm trying to encourage these conversations by having conversations with lovely people like yourself to inspire me to think differently, to open me up to possibilities, but also to share this with you all, audience, and hoping that you, what Laura just said, are thinking about these kinds of things, at least give it some thought. And I think what the work that you're doing is so central and important. It's so central to it because that's how we all get here. How do we create favorable conditions for this agent in the world that's going
Right.
to increase the likelihood of them realizing their gifts and talents, but also using those gifts and talents for the greater good, for the realization of their divine nature. Oh, when I say greater good, what I mean from my yogic perspective is acting like you are an expression of the divine. If you're acting like you're an expression of that which is divine, you will do good. You will do your best to do good. You will
Yeah.
stumble, like you say, you will fall off the horse, and then you pick yourself back up. Like, well, that was a dumb thing I did. All right, then you pick yourself back up and you do try to do better on it.
And then you
And I
surrender,
and you
surrender to beauty. You mentioned beauty. What an
mhm.
aspect of the divine beauty.
Yeah.
You know, there is a flag of peace that Nicholas Roerich, this Russian painter of the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, he designed a completely white flag and the circle, a big circle with a thick red. Um, I mean, like if you take a circle with very red, and in the middle, three little rounds, circles totally painted in red. And one of them is spirituality, the other one is science, and the other one is the arts. And what great teachers say in the spiritual world is that if in a society art, spirituality, and science are not working hand in hand, that
Hmm.
society does not deserve the title of civilization. So
Yeah.
we're barbarians, you know.
No.
And usually when we see one against the other, well, we have to come to a point in our Western world, at least, if not the whole planet, where art and its beauty and spirituality and science are hand in hand, bowing to the mystery of life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to say something about science here, folks. When we generally think about science, we think about materialistic science and the exploration of the physical world and trying to understand the physical world. But let's think about science at its core.
Yeah.
Science is about exploration. It is observing things. It's trying to make sense out of the patterns of the human experience. And so what we do in science, we try to quantify, at least in material science, we try to quantify the patterns that we are witnessing in the world. Experiments are moment to moment experiences in my book. We can create experiments so that we can take a closer look at a particular thing to see what patterns that we can pick up, and we use mathematics to describe those patterns, and from those patterns we make predictions about the world. We create stuff. For me, when I sit down to meditate, that is a scientific experiment. I am observing. I am Some aspect of my being is collecting data. It's making sense of my experience. And from that sense making of my experience, I may not necessarily use a mathematical equation to uh, uh, to 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 uh, to name the patterns that I'm witnessing, that I'm experiencing, that I'm gaining insights in. But I'm going to use those patterns, those understandings, and use those that science, that scientific understanding, to adapt my life in a direction that is in line with spirituality, I feel, that is in line with the divine.
Yeah.
And then that creativity, the spontaneity that comes out of art is so important. So when we reduce science to just simply coming up with mathematical equations and call them laws to explain patterns in the physical world, we are denying ourselves the the grand vast beauty and a potential in this wonderful world that we live in. um, and we deny ourselves the opportunity to make that divine connection and to bring it to life when we deny that it's there, or when we reduce it to physical manifestations, or to even just reduce it to our mathematical equations that are not the physical world in and of itself. It's just a way of looking at the patterns that we see, and we say that that's it. That's going to limit us. That right there, in and of itself, it's just completely limiting. And we go around as scientists thinking that we know everything and I got it figured all out. And then from the eyes of someone like yourself or me, or someone who's just kind of, not that we know everything, but we kind of have a broader understanding of the world, you're like, wow, that's very reductionistic and very limiting way of seeing things. So you can come up with all the technology you want, and I think it reflects in our society. Technology alone by itself doesn't make the world a better place. It's the mindset behind it. I think it's the spiritual foundation behind it, that's going to make the world a better place. And when we don't recognize that, then we get what just happening in the United States. We get a lot of the foolishness that's going all around in the world, that's going on in the world right now, because we've lost touch with our divine nature,
Yeah.
and we deny that it's there. Oh well, I'm going off on my little tangent
No, but
there,
it's
but
it's true. It's true. We want to deny. I see psychiatry with all the medicines that could help
yeah,
for a while, but then they want to cancel one of the most noble areas of the brain
I
that will
know.
be ours. Our supraconsciousness, not just the unconscious, subconscious, or the conscious, but the one above.
Mm-hmm.
And there are understandings of life that are worth our attention. We can explore with more than just a little extra sensorial perception. It can go much higher, and we are all called for that.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's well. I thank you so much for loving spirit. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, our time coming to a close. I don't know how these are going to go, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and an audience. I'm going to say this again because I think it came up several times with me. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just kind of saying, so I'm getting lost in in my words sometime. And today was a good day for that, and I know that I've learned something in that process. So I hope that you all that are listening can in Laura and I's play, the play that we just did today in this conversation, that you don't always have to be right. It's the exploration, it's the play, it's the communion itself in the dialogue that's most important. And discovery happens in the messiness of that type of dialogue. So
Yeah,
I at least wanted to put that out there because I know I felt like I was incoherent in a lot of things that I was saying, and I'm okay with that.
this is perfect. Yeah,
Yeah. Do you
life is
have
so
any?
rich.
Yeah, it's rich. Do you have any final words that you would like to share with the audience before we sign off here?
Well, this the task we have here of being ourselves and happy is a very interesting task. You go a
Mm-hmm.
little bit against the current by saying that people want help, want help. No, you go and help. You do the helping, and you be the happy one. And it is possible. It is possible. There are many ways. There are many books. There are many art forms. There's a lot of communion with nature. Each one of us will find a way of cultivated his or her own happiness. But it's important to do so. Let's be worthy of all these millions of cells working, trillions of cells working for us.
Mm. Well, Laura, this has been fun, and I am just grateful for you. I'm grateful for the work that you're doing in the world. I'm grateful for the light that you bring to the world. I'm grateful for your magic, and I hope we have a more dialogue, more conversations in the future,
Wonderful, wonderful. If
online
there
or
are
off.
online
Uh,
and offline, I love it. And if there are
yeah,
some reactions of what we're saying, yeah.
yeah. And I
So,
would, yeah, and vamos falar em português também.
falar em português também. I hope you can come to Brazil with your
Yes.
with your partner because
Mm,
yes, let's spend some endless hours on conversations as you like them. I'm
yeah.
now 70 years old, and I started speaking about when I was 22. I feel I'm still the same person. I'm still at the very beginning of something. Many years
Mm,
have gone by, almost 50. But boy,
mhm.
oh boy, it's so good to be in touch with whom we were and who we are and will be. There's a continuity. There's something that is wholesome in us. Let's be of service to that wholesomeness.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I hope this conversation has inspired you to reflect on your own views of the good life. If you enjoyed the show and want to hear more inspiring and thought provoking conversations, please follow, write a review, and rate us on your favorite podcast app. If you are tuning in on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support is very much appreciated.